Charles's family was upper class and had strong ties to the Anglican Church, as his father was an archdeacon. His family also was huge because all 10 of Charles's siblings survived into adulthood, which was very rare for that time. While Dodgson might be more well known for his work in literature, his interest in mathematics was sparked at an early age because his father studied mathematics when he was younger. In fact, the main area of Dodgson's studies at Oxford, which he attended from 1850 to 1854, was math. As a postgraduate, he was given the position of a mathematical lecturer. However, Dodgson was extremely bored by this and didn't like teaching his uninterested students. It was this boredom, though, that gave him the time to conceive his great ideas for both fictional and mathematical texts. And, well, he had a little help from some friends.
My, what a strange appearance and marvelous place this is.
I'm late for a very important thing. It's time to say hello, goodbye.
Well, I don't think he will be much of help.
Oh, and look, it's another.
Why, hello, good sir. Can you possibly tell me where I'm at?
There are much more important things to know than that. But considering I told the girl Alice how to control her size, I will give you information about one thing. Didn't even hesitate. While he might have wanted to know where he was and how he got there, he was much more curious about plain algebraic geometry, as he was writing a syllabus about this subject at the time. Plain algebraic geometry, you say? What a mouthful! I do know the topic you speak of, though.
Why, what luck?
I have, though, as you might have said, improved on it. And so they talked and talked and talked about curves and planes and equations until Dodgson had enough to fill a book, which, ironically, he did in his work, a syllabus of plain algebraic geometry, which was published in 1860.
Why, hello, who do we have here?
Charles Dodgson, sir, and yourself?
This is of no importance, but I hear you have an interest in mathematics.
But how? What?
I don't need a weather vane to tell which way the wind blows. It's just logic.
Oh, yes, logic. I am familiar with that.
Dodgson was very familiar with it, as he would eventually publish the books The Game of Logic in 1886 and Symbolic Logic in 1896.
You like logic when it has to do with words and games, but it can also apply through math, using ciphers and cryptograms.
Why? What's that?
Well, they're like codes. There's one that is a method of remembering logograms of complicated numbers by composing verses. Here's how you'd use them.
What a regrettably large head you have. I would much like to have it, but I can't with such a large head. I used to have for the Queen, you know. She had a small head.
What?
Pardon him, but he's a bit odd.
Odd? I am mad, like the mad hatter that I am.
They mean the same thing.
Can someone just inform me what's going on?
Well, before you come here, we were having a discussion. Yes, it was about determinants.
Determine what?
Determinants. They're values associated with the square matrix.
Oh, yes, I heard about that at the university.
They don't cover much about them at university, though.
Yes, Hatter. He was telling me about them.
Indeed I was, speaking of this. This is how it works. If there are m equations containing n variables where n is greater than or equal to n, and if there among them are equations which have a non-vanishing order R determinant of their unaugmented matrix, and if these R equations are taken along with each of the remaining equations successfully, each set of R plus 1 equations has ever order R plus 1 determinant of its augmented matrix equal to 0, then the equations are consistent. If any non-vanishing order R determinant of the system of R equations is selected, then n minus R variables whose coefficients are not contained in it may have arbitrary values assigned to them. For each set of arbitrary values, there is only one set of values for the other variables, and the remaining equations are dependent on those R equations.
That is brilliant. A tad bit confusing, but ultimately brilliant.
To simplify it, it basically helps with computing determinants arithmetically by condensation and for applying the process to solving simultaneous equations.
Dodgson would work tirelessly to show these contributions to the world. eventually did so in his books Condensation of Determinants in 1866 and the Elementary Treatise on Determinants in 1867. He took the Hatter's theorem and published it. It became known as Dodgson's theory. This is the work he was mainly recognized for as a mathematician. The other field that Dodgson's work is highly recognized in is the mathematical science behind voting and elections. He gained interest in this area from tennis tournaments. Since the Mad Hatter and Alice seemed so educated in math, Dodgson decided to ask them about it.
Why voting? I think the Queen of Hearts would be more suitable to answer your questions.
She has been squashing elections for years, so Dodgson left and set off to seek an audience with the Queen.
Who goes there?
An underworldly scholar. I seek knowledge of elections.
What about them?
The math behind them.
Well, the point in all elections is a fair majority, correct?
Correct.
Well, the use of matrix notation is best used because often in elections, multiple decisions must be made based on various factors.
I never thought of it like that.
Dodgson then began to think about it even more and went on to publish Parliamentary Elections and the Principles of Parliamentary Representation in 1884. However, they ended up contributing more to logic behind game theories.
Well, obviously you didn't think of it like that. Euclid would have thought of it. He was so marvelous.
The Euclid?
Why, yes, he visited some time ago.
He lived over 1,000 years ago.
It is different here.
I wish I could have met him.
Euclid was Dodgson's idol. He admired him so much that he wrote numerous books on him, such as the 2 books of Euclid and Euclid and his modern rivals. It was the mention of Euclid, though, that reminded Dodgson of our world and how many things he needed to do there. After all, he had a lot of information to share with the rest of the world now. Lucky for Dodgson, the Queen kept a door to Earth in the castle in case Euclid ever came back. He didn't inform her of his death for fear of being beheaded. He returned safely and published many informative texts and even fictional novels about the mystical world that he visited, which he dubbed Wonderland. The majority of his works were not recognized until later in life, but they are still used today when computers can't help us. Dodgson's works will always live. That's all, folks!
1, 2, 3.
We out!
Oh.